Throughout my own life and fitness journey, I have had the privilege of meeting incredible people who've shared valuable insights on mindset, health, fitness, and spiritual growth. The profound impact of this knowledge on my own life has inspired me to share it with all of you. I'm Erica Sweeney, host and founder of My Fit Tribe podcast. Join me as we explore inspiring conversations with experts, thought leaders, and everyday heroes who offer their stories and practical tips to help you on your own journey. From nutrition and fitness to mental well-being and personal or spiritual growth, our mission is to empower you to take charge of your health and live your best life. We are more than just a podcast, we are a community. Through coaching, a wealth of shared knowledge, and a strong support network, we are here to guide and encourage you every step of the way. Come be a part of our tribe. In today's episode, I sit down with Madhu Pura Dasa. We talk about his journey of becoming a monk, his study of Vedic teachings, and how he has applied those lessons to help others create a more abundant and meaningful life. We also talk about finding purpose, sitting in the quiet, and relearning your identity as a path to discovering your true self. It's a thoughtful conversation centered on growth and self-exploration. Joining me on the My Fit Tribe podcast is Madhu. He is a coach and teacher known for integrating ancient Vedic wisdom with practical strategies for modern living. After spending several years as a monk studying under world-renowned teachers, he developed a deep foundation in Vedic arts and sciences. His work focuses on helping individuals create balanced, purpose-driven lives. Committed to both teaching and continual learning, he brings an authentic, grounded approach to transformation. Hello, Madhu. Thank you for joining me.
Howdy. I'm so grateful to get to be in this space talking about what will hopefully be fascinating and transformational topics.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about what you're offering in your coaching space, but really to understand how you got here, I'd love to hear about your spiritual journey because we have a lot of episodes where we talk about, nutrition and fitness and mindset, but those spiritual components are the ones that really sit closest to my heart. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Well, I did what every 18-year-old boy does, and that's shave my head and become a celibate monk and move to India, Pretty standard and straightforward. Yeah. Well, in all seriousness, that is what I did. And the reason being is I had been exploring from, honestly, a really young age, as pretty much as far as my memories go back, and asking a lot of questions to the point where I was often met with, all right, keep it down, stop with the questions. I was met with that quite often in my younger years, sometimes still am. And long story short, as I explored different philosophies and theologies of around the world, when I started getting into Eastern teachings, some of the more esoteric teachings, specifically from India, the Vedic texts that date back at least several thousand years, some say 5,000 years, it started opening me up to concepts that honestly blew my mind. Having been met by, oh, you asked too many questions, don't worry about that, just have faith, or whatever the case might be, and feeling very dissatisfied, coming across these ancient teachings which had answers to questions I honestly didn't even know I had. What to speak of the ones I did have. It gave me an idea that, okay, there's clearly a lot of knowledge out there that I'm not even familiar with. And so I started visiting different ashrams, different monasteries, and meeting some monks. And I was like, okay, I don't know, there's something weird and awesome about you folk. I don't know what you're doing, but give me a bite of sorts. Give me a taste. And from there, it took a little time, but I eventually said, let's go all in, shaved my head, moved to India, joined a monastery, and lived that way for 5 years.
So where are you from originally?
San Diego, California.
San Diego. Okay, so you're a teenager, and all of a sudden you just have an interest in the Vedic culture and the Vedic history, and that you just start learning, and it brings you out to shave your head and become a monk. Is it that simple?
There's a beautiful word that I think everyone listening will be familiar with: suffering. Even having a relatively decent upbringing, like I'm very grateful for my parents and all they provided for me and my family. It was a very humble beginning, and I knew that it was still very blessed compared to the majority of the world around. And regardless of how blessed I was, San Diego's beautiful, being raised in a nice climate, having two parents to take care of me, no matter how humble the situation is. There was still so much suffering that I experienced, and I was surrounded by a lot of death. I lost a sister to a car accident, drunk driver when I was 8 years old. And that was obviously a very pivotal moment, and, lost several other family members, and was surrounded by this concept that, oh, okay, there's going to be an end sometime. And so from probably around that time, 8 or so on, and just going through the basic sufferings of life, whether it's being bullied, whether it was struggling with, what do they call it, ADD first, and then it was ADHD, and then it was like, oh, you also have anxiety, and you also have, and getting this Rolodex of labels of quote unquote problems. I thought, okay, there's got to be some meaning behind all this. And that's when I first studied mostly Western philosophy, if you can call it that, like Abrahamic theologies. And that's what really got me inclined from a young age, going to different types of camps. What is it? Young Life? Maybe some listeners here that'll make them nostalgic. There's different types of church camps and whatnot I tried going to. And ultimately, I'm grateful for everything I learned, but ultimately I still had questions that went unanswered. And that's when I first started reading what was called the Bhagavad Gita, one of the most well-studied theological and philosophical texts in the world, from India. And that's really what opened my mind up.
Wow. So I looked up Vedic because I wasn't familiar with that term. And what I found was it consists of 4 sacred texts that were composed over 5,000 years ago, and it's considered a comprehensive living tradition of spiritual and practical knowledge that provides insights into the nature of reality, consciousness, and the self. And for me, the whole spiritual side of thing and the consciousness really, it gives me goosebumps just talking about it. Okay, so let's keep going with your journey. You end up going over to near India, or in India. Is that where you did your studying then? Yeah. And how long were you studying over there?
Yeah, so I spent 5 years as an actual student monk itself, and I would have spent probably the whole time in India, but every 180 days, because of my visa, they would say, time to go. So I would spend 6 months in monasteries in India, and the other 6 in monasteries in the US primarily. I would also travel a few in Europe, and did kind of some extensive travels going from ashram to ashram. But the idea was 6 months in India, 6 months in Western monasteries, where you can understand the culture is not necessarily so familiar with ashrams. So yeah, I had to find him, of course, but that was how I traveled back and forth, and living completely off of donations, pretty much out of a backpack. Everything I owned literally fit into this cute little hiking backpack that somebody gifted me when I first became a monk. And I didn't have to worry about what I was going to wear, because, orange sheets again. Cool. It's a one size fits all, orange robes. And, very simple hairdo. You shave. And so it's very, very simple, humble life. You wake up 3:34 in the morning, do a few hours of meditation with the other monks. We call it a spiritual frat house of sorts. I don't think they call it. That's what I call it, at least. And then you just spend the day serving. And the idea is everyone's engaged according to their propensity. So I like to teach, and therefore I would go to universities, teach meditation. So people, they like to cook, they cook for us, and many people that we would come and feed. And so everyone's engaged according to their nature and propensities.
So when you spent that time meditating, because again, that's one of those things that I'm so fascinated by, but I have not been good at it because it's very hard for me. So when you're young and you go to study and you learn the meditation, is there something that like a spiritual experience that you had that really helped give you the guidance on how to continue on that meditative journey and on your religious journey?
Yeah, more than I can mention here, but maybe I'll just touch on one or two of the more significant ones. And I should preface, I'm very cynical and skeptical by nature. And it's something I've been doing my best through my adult life to work my way through. But just for various reasons, I doubt everything and challenge everything. And that's maybe why I ask so many questions. And so I was very against Eastern practices. I'd heard a lot in my growing up, a lot of bad things about Eastern spiritual practices. So I'd always doubted them. I always wrote them off as woo-woo or, hippie-esque, whatever the case might be. And so the first big realization, what I would say the first logical realization, was understanding that not only was there a push towards finding answers around us, but again, there were very clear answers mentioned in, say, these Vedic texts, as you very well defined. The definition of Vedic texts that you gave, I could not give one better myself. What they really are is the oldest written teachings of sequential philosophy that we have in the world, that we know of in the world. And what they do is they they go over various aspects of our life for each and every one of us in a way that we can ultimately gather knowledge. Because the more knowledge we have, the more clarity we have in life. And the more clarity, the more opportunity to make decisions on a conscious level. And so for me, the first realization or illumination came through having read some of these ancient texts. Like I mentioned before, not only to answer the questions I did have, but answer questions I didn't even thought of. Stuff that I had pretty much scoured different practices and processes here in the West, and I just couldn't find. And like I said, I either meet a dead end, or someone would just don't worry about it, or just have faith, or stop asking me questions, or whatever it might be. So the first logical realization was, okay, there's an unlimited amount of knowledge available to me. This is pre-AI. And then there were, of course, mystical experiences as well, which definitely sound a little more on the woo side, but where in my meditation practice, just ways in which I experienced freedom from the mind and the senses. And the way that I like to describe it is, we have a body, we have a mind, but we're something divine. Our body's constantly changing. Every 7 years, every cell in our body is completely regenerated. That means we're reincarnating every 7 years. And so we understand we're not the body, we have a body, because the body changes, and I'm not less of a person if I lose an arm. So who is the me that's driving around the biomechanical robot, aka human body? Similarly, I have a mind, but I'm not the mind because I can change the mind. I can have a thought and I can modify, I can change it. So who is that spark, that self, that spirit, that unit of consciousness driving around the mind and the robot? And so many opportunities where I saw that space, and that space was created from which I can actually make conscious decisions in my life. But anyway, a long list of stories, both logical and some more metaphysical.
Those moments, those mystical moments, as you call them, are such gifts that, many people don't get to experience. So I'm sure that was a life-changing experiences for you to be able to get to that conscious space, or unconscious space almost, because it really is a different level of consciousness. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
So how did you take then this experience and this, self-reflection and learning into deciding that you wanted to help other people?
Well, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Actually, the process that I learned, so it's called Bhakti Yoga. It literally means yoga means to connect, divine connection, and then Bhakti means through love and service. And so the process that I lived as a monk in, which is a very non-sectarian process. You can come from any background, no matter what race, ethnicity, religion, gender, all those things are relevant. Anyone in any situation can practice the art of what's called Bhakti Yoga, or divine connection through love and service. And so in that process, the emphasis is on, service. And ultimately, happiness comes from service. And this is something I definitely had to experience to believe. I would have never believed it. I learned it. The more I get, then the happier I'll get. I need to consume. If I give, I'll have less. I can't. If I give, I'll have less to deal with. But rather, the nature of this material world around us is happiness only comes from service. And service is what we do when we love someone or something. We serve them. And so the way to actually learn to love others and practice the art of loving others and connecting with them is to serve them. Just like if I love my wife very much, in a week, we'll celebrate 10-year anniversary from the time we met. And she still likes me at 10 years.
Happy anniversary.
Fine, thank you. And the way in which I could say I love you all day long, but the way I show that love is through service. And so the art of, I would say, practicing the art of going out of our way to take on some inconvenience to help others to improve their quality of life, this is the highest satisfaction anyone can get. And how do we even know that? I've met some really incredibly wealthy people who have more money than they could possibly know what to do with. And you see, what do they want to spend their free time with their loved ones, having fun? What do they want to do with their money? Want to give philanthropically? What do they want to do with their time? Volunteer. Because you can have everything. You realize, wow, this doesn't make me happy. And the people who do wind up having, quote unquote, everything, they wind up figuring this realization out at some point, that the happiness actually comes from giving and serving. And so it took some time for that hill to go down of sorts. But once I did, I can say that there's no satisfaction available in this world like the satisfaction of serving others.
We have had that as a recurring theme in this podcast, which is one thing I love, because when you get those recurring themes, that those are the breadcrumbs for people to follow. But that even metaphysically, that our bodies react differently, positively, if we're helping other people. So it's not just an emotional satisfaction. It actually helps you be healthier when you are helping other people, which just shows that is meant what we are as humans meant to do.
Yeah, social mammals. It's biologic. We're biologically programmed that way.
Yeah. So you come back to the United States then, and you decide to come to Place of Service. So talk a little bit about what your coaching program is and how you came about it and how it's changed over the last few years.
It was accidental, honestly. I'd studied different arts and sciences, Vedic arts and sciences from the East. And one of those ones is called Ayurveda. And for those unfamiliar, it's one of the oldest Eastern medicine teachings in the world. And it's all about holistic wellness. And so I'd studied that for years, and that was as a monk. And that was one of my services to others, is sharing some of the holistic knowledge that I had learned. And so inevitably, when I graduated the monastery, so in my case, after about 5 years, that's when my teacher said, "Hey, is it time to start to integrate?" And it's very personalized. It's not like you go get a bachelor's for 4 years and then you go back into the world. It's very personal. Some people will be a student monk for 1 year, some for 8 years, whatever the time frame might be. But 99% of monks will graduate to become "quote unquote" normal people again. See, for those who can see this, I have hair, and I'm wearing normal people clothes again. Anyway, I don't think anything about me is normal other than that. But the idea is, I graduated and I just never kept doing what I was doing and helping others and giving this knowledge and just living off of donations for a little while. And that didn't work too well because I was far under the poverty level. Now I'm very grateful. A lot of people were very generous to me and, helped out, and, living off donations is a very humbling experience. That's for sure. But I realized I have to take control of my life, and I figured out I think I should probably make a business out of this. And I failed terribly for about 2 years trying to figure it out on my own, trying to recreate the wheel. And then eventually I thought, okay, just as I spent so many years learning the art of meditation, learning to control the mind and the senses, learning Ayurveda and holistic health, I have to actually learn about the art of money and finance, which I had zero experience prior. The most money I ever had probably at one time was $400 to my name. And that was saved up after a summer of lifeguarding at the ripe old age of 16. So, I knew nothing about money and finance. And so that's where I went into a deep dive of reading every book you can about it, starting to take as much training as I could, and slowly but surely actually learning the art of business, finance, sales, marketing. I'm just very grateful to say that business became very successful. And that's when, about 4 years ago, I decided to start helping other people do this as well, help other health and wellness experts, especially on the holistic side, grow their business so they don't have to struggle the same way I did, trying to figure out how to put together a successful wellness business.
So what do you think are the main principles then of a successful wellness business? Because a lot of people are in that wellness space, and it is difficult to transition from, coaching or servicing to actually growing income. Is there like a top 3 things just to start learning about? Obviously, you don't want to give away your trade secrets.
Oh, I'll give them all away for free. We give everything away for free. All of our courses, all our modules, everything is completely free. We only sell implementation for people who want help with applying it. So I like to give all the best stuff. And if I were to consolidate it to 3, I would say there's the 3 buckets would be service, value, and systems. Just a brief note on each is, as you so eloquently brought this point up before, it's service really is everything. And first and foremost is creating a mindset of service, of really, my job here is to do everything I can to make as much of what I have, what knowledge I have, available to others. And that leads to the second point, which is value. It's just give. Give as much value as you can. Change lives. If you simply figure out a way to serve others and change their lives by providing value, ultimately you end up making more money than you know what to do with, because money only comes from value. People make the mistake. They think money comes from hard work. It doesn't. I know people work 80 hours a week and they're billed to bill, and grateful for what they do. Don't get me wrong, but hard work does not equal money. It's actually the value you provide others. And then the third part of systems is putting it together in a way where it makes logical and sequential sense to be able to serve people and provide them value, and then also be rewarded financially for doing that. And so if you serve, go out of your way, find people who want help with things you can help them with, give them as much value as possible, and then systematize that in such a way so that it makes sure that all of your bases are covered and some. You have all your expenses covered, you have some savings going in, you have some charity you can give, and then you just don't stop. You keep building from there. I mean, that's a very oversimplified version, but if I were to put it into 3, those would be the 3 core elements.
What do you see that people need to or want to learn the most from what you do? Because you offer this, concept of being in alignment, which I think for many people in different stages of their life can be difficult to figure out what that is. So in the people that you've helped and the processes you've gone through, what does that mean? What does that look like for people?
Yeah, I have a name for it. We call it conscious closing. And the term is indicating the idea of closing a sale, but in a conscious or integral based way. Because the biggest challenge people experience is, how do I actually sell my stuff? Is money's bad? Well, we have all these terrible misconceptions about money. Money is the root of all evil. Money makes you bad. There's just I don't even want to say them. I don't even want to give them. I don't want to entertain them because there's no actual logical justification. Rather, money is not good or bad. It's a resource. It's an amplifier. A knife isn't good or bad. A knife can be used by a surgeon to perform surgery and save someone's life. That same knife can be used to take someone's life. The knife is not good or bad. It's the attention behind it. So similarly, people have such a poor relationship with money. And I can say that because I definitely had that for the majority of my life, first 20-something years. And people want, consciously or unconsciously, to improve their relationship with money. And that really means removing all the negative connotation they have about it, which through society or through TV, whatever it might be, through so many external influences, we learn all these false understandings about money and our relationship with money. So at the core of it is learning how to fall in love with the art of giving so much value to people that it only makes sense for you to be reciprocated financially with. And then learning how to charge in such a way that everyone's happy. Because one of the biggest misconceptions is, if I take money from you, that's less money for you. But it's not true. Just as if I took a $5 bill and I walked down the street and I said, "Excuse me, person, here's a $5. What could you trade me for $5? And they pull out a pen. And I give them $5, they give me the pen, and I walk away. And that person walks up to someone else and say, "I've got $5. What can you give me?" And they give a notepad, and you trade the notepad for the $5. And in this way, they can keep giving. That $5 never lost value. That one original $5 bill that I handed keeps providing value step by step by step. So as we learn the art of, the more money I can create with integrity, the more I can bring into the environment, into the ecosystem, into the actual economy around me. And the more, quote unquote, good I can do with that, the more I can keep giving it out, the more lives I can change in a positive way. So ultimately, it just comes down to learning how to use the energy of money and understanding it properly, so that you can not only do it with integrity, deal with it with integrity, but also it's the gift that keeps on giving. Know that the more money I make and I give into others, the more it's just going to inevitably expand and keep touching more and more people's lives.
When you look at being alignment outside of the financial return on it, is there a way that you guide people into finding what their purpose is, again, aside from the financial side of it?
Absolutely. And I would say your question alludes to the first step, really, because before we even talk about money, money is, how do I charge for this? But we can't talk about how until we know what. And so I really love the question you just asked, because it's the foundation of being able to make any skill set, any system, is we need to know what we want to achieve. And I'm a big believer of everyone has a gift. Everyone has a unique gift, a purpose. In Sanskrit, the term is dharma. Literally means the intrinsic nature of something. Everyone has this, and there's different terms. The Japanese call it ikigai. There's the telos in Greek. There's various ways we can talk about the concept of purpose, but everyone has a unique set of skills and gifts. And then our job is to identify them. And there's a very quick and easy way to do this. It's maybe not as thorough as I might encourage, but the first step of this is to make what I call a gifts list. That's GIFTS, gifts list. A list of all your gifts, all the things you love to do that you're great at, that whenever you do them, you don't want to stop. It's like we all have a list of things, that accomplishments, traits, ways in which when we show up and do those things, it just becomes so much fun. It just flows through us. And make a long list. And even if that list only comes to 5 things, that's cool. If it comes to 50, that's cool too. Just start by, I always like to say, sit down, shut up, turn anything with an on-off switch off, lock the door if you have to, tell everyone, leave me be until I come out of this room, and sit down and write a list of all your gifts. And then from there, just ask yourself the question of, where's the through line? If I were to look at all of this, like, what's one thing I can do where I can take as many of these as possible and put them together in a way that I not only improve my quality of life, I improve the quality of life of others as well. So step one, gifts list. Step two is identify what the big movers are, the most important ones are to you, and just package that in a way that you could, again, not only just help you, but help others with it. And then from there, that's where it just comes into how do we want to, that's where, say, the financial component or the structural component comes into, all right, how do I actually make this make sense so that I can turn this into, quote unquote, a living?
So how did you take your experience with the yoga and the mindfulness to determine what your gift was in order to start what you're doing?
Well, the process of the yoga and the mindfulness is ultimately create space between our stimuli and response. And so the mind by nature, we're mostly functioning off our subconscious mind. When we get in the car, we're usually not having to think about everything. In the beginning, we do. It's new, but eventually it becomes second nature. Our subconscious mind takes it over. When we're brushing our teeth, we're not having to think, okay, now twist my wrist this way and let me do this. It just moves on second nature, as we call it. It just moves on its own. And so most of our life is like that, is something happens to us and we just react. The process of mindfulness and yoga is to create as much space as possible between that stimuli and our ability to consciously respond or react to it. And so the process of these ancient teachings of mindfulness and yoga are to create that space and ultimately allow us to say, wait a second, how do I want to respond here? What do I actually want to say? What do I actually want to do? What do I not want to say or do here? Whatever it might be. And so in that way, it created enough, quote unquote, space for me to actually be able to ask these deeper questions and introspect. Because if we don't, as I say, sit down and shut up, it's my joking way of talking about meditation. You got to sit down and shut up for a minute. And then you start to see what the mind comes up with. And if you create that space, if you start to say, wait a second, I don't want to just react to life. I want to respond in a conscious way. Then in that space, we'll actually be able to identify, what do I truly want to be doing with my life? What are my gifts? What have I been blessed with? What are the ways in which I show up where people compliment me on? What are the achievements I feel the most proud of? And within that space, starting to make some conscious decisions of, yeah, this is what I want to do with my life. But otherwise, if we don't make that space, we're just going to be impelled by one distraction to another. And before we know it, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, a whole lifetime can go by. And so taking that time to make that space, I would say, is arguably the most important use of our attention.
We are in a very reactive society. We are in autopilot most of the time, and I think that is our default mode, I like to call it. So it is, I think, important that we all find a medium in order to quiet that noise. It can be different for everybody, based on their spirituality and their experiences. So if you have someone who, again, is in that busy state of life with their schedule and unable to slow down a whole lot, and maybe not necessarily looking to make a change, regarding a business, or just kind of want to be more in harmony with their life, what do you suggest to people other than just being quiet?
Yes.
Yes. How do you find that?
Yeah. And what a beautiful question. And, it's one thing I very much appreciate about you and all the value you offer on this podcast is your familiarity with all these topics. The way I would say is step number one is we have to catch ourselves. And so the way to do that is it's very tough to change the mind with the mind. And so doing something physically, and whether that's actually a type of workout or stretch or just doing something with our body to kind of alleviate the built up tension that the body creates is number one. And so doing something physical with the body and or with the breath is usually step one, just something that's going to help us create that initial space. And sometimes we as a species can look past controlling our breath because it just happens automatically. We don't have to think about it. But just taking a minute to think about the breath to first create that space. And whether that means just taking 8 deep breaths and making them the longest breaths of today, even that itself can be enough to slow down the functions of the mind. Or something a little bit more in depth, a type of breath work that's actually really going to focus the attention, counting the amount of seconds for the inhale, counting the amount of seconds for the exhale, maybe adding a few retentions there. Just something very basic that we all can do for free that's at our fingertips by just controlling our breath and starting to focus our attention where we want it to go. That's really step number one, because where attention goes, energy flows. And if we can't control our attention, then we really can't control our life. Otherwise, every distraction that comes our way that grabs our attention, we're going to be moving there. Because what are we other than our attention, ultimately? if we really think about us in an essential way, what are we? We are where our attention is. If we close our eyes right now and we think of about a beach on Hawaii that we've been before, where are we? Are we here right now or are we on the beach? Hard to say, because ultimately we are where our attention goes. And so step one is create that space to put your attention where you want it. And then step two is kind of really getting into the heart of your question, which is, what do I actually do now that I brought my attention? Where do I want to bring my attention? And I would say the most important question here is, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? Like, how can I be contributing in this world in a way that will provide me deep satisfaction, deep connection? And that's intrinsically connected to our service. What is my purpose and how can I provide that to others? And then the other component, the other meditation, the other question is, how can I use my faculties, my senses, my eyes, my ears, my listening, my smelling, my tasting, my touching? How can I use the faculties I've been given to understand as much about this life and who I am as possible? Because there's what's my purpose in a functional level in society, but there's also a deeper level of like, who am I ultimately? And the only way to identify that, of course, we can meditate for a long time and think about it and churn on it, but it's really through knowledge and consuming knowledge. And so once we identify what is my purpose, is starting to ask the question of who am I, and starting the exploration of studying as much knowledge as you can around that topic. Who am I really in the deepest sense? Am I really just this body? It doesn't make any sense, because the body changes. Every time I look in the mirror, actually the cells on my face are even changing. They're different. It might look similar, but we're changing second to second. So I can tell I'm not my body, and I can tell I'm not my mind, because my mind changes. So what is that spark within? What is that real me driving around this meat suit of a human body? What is the real me driving around the software of the mind? And asking this question and studying, say, whether it's whatever you can get your hands on, frankly. I prefer the Vedic teachings. They really help me, but whatever we can get our hands on, starting to learn from ancient philosophy and knowledge, especially ones that people for many millennia have been practicing, and identifying with a deep way, what's my purpose in this life and who am I on a deeper level beyond just the physical mind and the body.
What was it about the Vedic teaching in your time as a monk that brought you to right now?
It's the most beautiful conception of consciousness. I'm very open. I'm very anti-dogma. It's not like, oh, everyone has to do the Vedic text. I'm very open to anything else that provides a better, clear, more beautiful understanding of the self and consciousness. It's so far just the best option I've come across in terms of the knowledge of self. For instance, the teaching is that we're units of consciousness which are eternal. And we can even understand that the same us that remembers what happened when we were 5 years old, even though the mind and the body were different. I hope our bodies were very different when we were 5 compared to today. Our body didn't just stretch. It literally changed on a fundamental cellular level. So who was the me perceiving the mind and the body when I was 5, when I was 10, 15, 20, whatever it might be? And the Vedic teachings teach that it's the self, an eternal unit of consciousness. And even the only experience we have is eternality. In other words, we can remember our past, even though our body and our mind changed. There's some consistency there, the real self, the soul, in Sanskrit it's called the Atma, whatever term you might want to give it, the self that has never changed is there, and it's actually eternal, and it's fully blissful by nature. And actually any suffering we have is a temporary layer. It's a type of conditioning that's covering the true nature of the blissful self. And in this way, the process of what we call self-realization in a very literal way is removing the conditioning, removing all the external temporary identifications to really see the illuminated self, just as a diamond is there, and you have to clean off the coal to really be able to appreciate the full beauty. Similarly, the process of the Vedic teachings is how to remove the coal-like dirt of the conditionings of all these labels and external designations that are temporary and changing second to second, how to remove them so we can really understand our true selves, our true natures. And it gives endless ways to do that, as well as how to engage with others, how to serve others for a sense of happiness, how to actually connect divinely in a very personalized way, not in a way that's sectarian, but in a way that every single unique living entity can have a unique individual relationship with divinity, just like we have unique fingerprints, we have unique roof palettes. Of course, these are physical and external. What to speak of our unique self that's unlike any other living entity that exists today, has existed in the past, or will exist in the future. And uncovering that and various practices of how to uncover that, that's ultimately why the Vedic teachings have still to this day become my foremost utilization of knowledge.
I recently started reading the book Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And this was recommended to me by a friend of mine, and I'm not very far into it, but the first few chapters talk about how what we identify ourself as is based on our experiences up until that point. And if we keep doing the same things over and over again, and we are what we were in the past, we can't become something different in the future if our mind is doing the same things it has been doing, and we always think of ourselves as what we have been. And the basis behind the book, it talks about the healing, not only spiritually and emotionally, but physically, when you're able to make the transition between thinking of you as what you were versus you as what you are today and living in the present, and also as you, what you see yourself as in the future. So that is why when you talk about living in harmony with yourself and with your consciousness, I think it's really important for people to understand that it takes a lot of work, right? It's hard to quiet yourself and really reflect on what you're seeing yourself as in order to make those transitional changes. And things will come up to scare you right off of that path. I asked the question recently to someone, why do you think it is when we have that idea of that path we're supposed to go on? So let's say someone does meditation and they kind of have an idea of what their gifts are, and they start down a path, and it all of a sudden some fear or something in life or some objection will come up and stall them. Like, why can't it be when we finally find our purpose of helping other people, I feel like there should be a bright neon light that says, go this way, go this way. Instead, you're going to hit those hurdles. And I think it's really important when you're talking about all of this. It all sounds grand, but it's really not that simple. So what are your thoughts on all that?
Well, first off, Dr. Joe Dispenza is so gifted and so talented, and I almost want to take exactly what you just said and create a soundbite meditation to listen to every day. And I would encourage people to do that, because it's one of those teachings that when someone says it out loud, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. But it's so profound, actually. It's not the kind of thing that most people are naturally familiar with. It takes someone like him and you to present it in a very accessible way for it to make sense. So anyway, I loved that point you just made. And I'll use that as the reference point to dig deeper into the question you're asking about, okay, it sounds grand, but how do I actually do it, even though it's uncomfortable, even though it's difficult, even though it feels very challenging at times? And what I will say is I'm going to modify the vernacular here just a pinch. And I'll say it's simple but uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is, and again, what I'm sharing here comes from the ancient Vedic teachings, like the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Purana, and some of these ancient texts from ancient India, far before India was called India. And the idea behind this is around our identity. So as you were alluding to so nicely, so wonderfully, that Dr. Joe was talking about, is everything comes from a sense of identity. Whatever we identify ourselves to be, we create beliefs accordingly. I believe Einstein's the one who is attributed saying, if you do the same thing over and over and you expect something different, that's the definition of insanity. So what happens then, if we identify as fill in the blank, we then create certain beliefs that, oh, I am this, I am fill in the blank. And then from those beliefs, that's where our feelings and thoughts come from. And then from those feelings and thoughts, that's where our words and actions start to come into existence. From our words and actions, that's where the results we get in our life. So if we trace all our results, we look at everything we're experiencing and we trace it back, it ultimately comes back to a sense of identity. So again, just to reiterate, because I know we're getting a little meta here, whatever I identify as, my whole self will create beliefs around that identity. I am an Italian American, Southern Californian, that fill in the blank, like whatever it might be. We create beliefs around that. From those beliefs, my thoughts and feelings, I now start to have particular feelings based off those beliefs. I have thoughts based off of those beliefs. And then from those thoughts and beliefs, that's where my words and actions manifest. Because whatever we're thinking, ultimately, and feeling, that's what comes out of our face. That's what we actually do. And then from those actions and words, that's where we get all the results we have in our life. So if we want to change our results, as Dr. Joe talks about, we got to change on an identity level, which will change our thinking, feeling, actions, words, results. So I know it sounds like a lot, but just so I can thoroughly answer your question, that's the basis. Now, in short, it comes down to the nature of the self is actually what we might say self-luminous. It's actually very easy to be ourself. The reason it's uncomfortable is just when somebody's sick. Like let's take the sickness jaundice, which those unfamiliar, it's an issue with bile. We don't get so much into it, but when you're jaundice, if you eat sugar, if you drink, say, sugarcane juice, which actually helps heal the jaundice, it tastes bitter. The sugar, the sweet sugar tastes very bitter. And then as you start to drink, it's very difficult to drink anything sugary because of how bitter it tastes. But eventually that very sweetness that tastes bitter cures you. Or we might even have experience with medicines that's like really gross to take. But then even though it's tough in the beginning, it ultimately gets us back into our healthy position. Similarly, the mindfulness, the meditation we're referring to here, though it might be a little uncomfortable, like medicine might taste gross in the beginning because we are in a ailed situation, because we're not necessarily in our clear-minded self. We're in a conditioned, coated place where we're identifying ourselves with all these beliefs that are actually not resonant with the self, that are, again, they're external, they're material, they're temporary, they're transient. Because of that, in the beginning, the meditations can feel uncomfortable, like taking that sugar, like taking that medicine. But slowly but surely over time and just a little bit of dedication, whether it's 30 seconds a day, 30 minutes a day, whatever time we can start to slowly but surely give our attention to the self through mindfulness. Eventually, over time, the exact opposite happens. That thing that was once gross becomes very sweet. That medicine, which was disgusting, is now actually very nourishing. And so, though it might feel difficult or challenging or uncomfortable, the more we do it and the more we create that space from ourself and our conditioning, the easier life actually becomes. And so my suggestion in one sentence is, what could I commit to doing every day that's very easy to create, say, some space between myself and my conditioning, myself and my mind, myself and my body, and sit with the quote unquote real self beyond the conditioning, deconnecting, detaching from all these labels. I'm a this, I'm a that, which are temporary and they're going to change either in this life or in the next. They're going to go away at some point. And how do I go beyond that and sit with the nature of the self, the soul, the Atma? That would be, it's not a short answer, but that's ultimately how we would get to the conclusion of picking something every single day that I can commit to. 1 second, 5 seconds, whatever it is, sitting with the self, and slowly but surely it will get easier over time, just like medicine is going to get us to a place where we are ultimately healthy.
Well, I think it's important too. You acknowledge that when you were a monk, that it was simplified, right? You wore the same thing every day. You didn't have you shaved your head. Your practice was simple. Sometimes, in order for us to be in alignment with maybe what our soul is meant to be, we need to simplify those layers by going in the quiet and shedding that identity, shedding that traumatic experience that happened when we were 5 or whatever it may be, all those things that are kind of binding to us based on our experiences, in order to kind of figure out how to be in alignment with our consciousness. I think that's, just one way of thinking about that meditation. It's just kind of, let's simplify the brain for a little bit and let's shed some of that identity, because your body can negatively react to all that stuff that you're holding. So you may not want to be a coach or provider of a wellness industry, but still have the need to quiet the mind in order to be healthier mentally, spiritually, or physically as well.
Brilliantly said. That was, what a wonderful point. And it just made me think of this idea that the mind always just finds evidence for whatever we believe. It's like this game Punch Buggy. Have you ever played Punch Buggy? Do you know that? Or if you see
a VW or whatever,
a Volkswagen Bug, you get to like punch your sibling or your cousin, in the arm. Punch Buggy. Or maybe a more accurate example is when somebody gets a new car, all of a sudden you start to see everyone else on the road that has the same car. And so was it that those cars weren't there before? No, of course they were. Were the punch buggies on the road before? Of course they were. We just didn't attune our attention there. And so because this idea where attention goes, energy flows, is that wherever I tune my attention to, I'm going to find opportunities. And therefore, if I'm trying to find evidence for whatever belief identity I have, I'll find it. So to your wonderful point is, as I start to de-identify with the things I don't want to identify, as I start to consciously connect myself and identify with the things I do want to identify with, I will also find evidence for that to be true. And therefore, it is our prerogative, it is our duty, one might even go so far as to say, to connect our identity with our highest self, because then we will find evidence to believe whatever beliefs connect to that to be true, just as we would if we say, oh, I'm a bad person, I'm a fill in the blank. Our mind will also find evidence for that. Therefore, practice the art of identifying with what you want to identify with.
Exactly.
And you might find the evidence.
That reticular activating system is a beautiful thing. So before we wrap up today, I just want to touch a little bit. You talk about transforming your mind to achieve your biggest goals. So if you have someone who's achieved a lot and wants to dream bigger, do you have a quick piece of advice for people when they're at that point where they maybe have a goal where you're like, that's crazy, and then when you start to believe it, which we've touched on a little bit, how that can be a game changer?
Yeah, what a beautiful idea of dreaming big, because what's the alternative? It's very unfortunate. It's like if somebody came and said, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to just kind of be fine like this. Whatever. This is all I can get. What an unfortunate belief. But rather, the bigger, the better, because actually everything in this universe expands. We can even see the universe itself. We now have proof that everything, even in this universe, is ever expanding. And so in a similar way, why not us? If we have an idea, if there's something that lives in our mental real estate, in our mind, then it is our ability through our free will to bring that idea, that something that we can perceive in our mind externally into the world. I mean, take a sewing machine. Someone had to think of the idea of putting a sewing machine together in their mind. And then after they had a clear mental vision, from there, they could then put it into reality. So the bigger the dream, the better, because these dreams from the Vedic perspective, they don't come randomly. They come from divine inspiration, actually. They're quite blessing. They're individual blessings of sorts when we have these big dreams. And so that's just celebrating the idea that a big dream comes. Like, hooray for everyone who's dreaming big. You're doing it right. Keep going big, no matter how scary it is. The way to help manifest that into reality in a very little way, like actually bring that from the idea of the mind, that goal into the mind, into actual physical existence, is to be very crystal clear and specific on what you want and make sure it's in the positive. So the mind doesn't work in negatives. For instance, if I said, don't think of an elephant, everyone just thought an elephant. It doesn't work in negatives. We have to talk about what we do want, not what we don't want. And so first bring our desires into the positive and get as specific as physically possible. The mistake is people dream big, but in vague ideas. Identify with as much clarity as you possibly can what you deeply desire in the positive. And then from there, once you create the mental real estate for it to exist, that is the first step of bringing it into this actual world. And then it's just a matter of, what can I commit to doing on a regular basis that will bring this software idea into hardware, into the external world around me? What can I commit to doing on a regular basis that will bring it out? And then it's just a matter of waiting, like planting a seed into the ground. Anything beautiful in this world typically takes a little bit of time. But then we plant it, we water it every day, and we wait with patience.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool when you start to really, I learned through my bodybuilding journey that once I was kind of in training and I was looking at all these people that they were bodybuilders and I wasn't. And someone said to me, well, you're competing. That means you're a bodybuilder too. And I didn't really identify as one because I couldn't, it was just a dream. It wasn't actually doing it. But everybody has achieved that had to start somewhere and go through it. So once you start attaching that identity of that successful version of you and owning it a little bit, that makes a big difference in the journey as well.
I love that point. Yeah, as somebody who used to be incredibly overweight as a child, I can say that no one's ever lost a lot of weight if they say, oh, I'm the kind of person, I'm just always going to be this way. I'm never going to lose weight. That's not the person who loses weight. The person who loses weight says, I am the kind of person who
gets up every day or who does. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, you're a great example of that through, the discipline of training the body.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I miss it for sure. Well, I really appreciate the conversation today. I just wanted, there's some things in there that I think it's important that people open up their mind a little bit about how they can think differently, like you said, even just a few minutes a day, and make those changes in order to positively affect their future, because the goal is you want your future self to thank you for those changes that you're making today. So, yeah. So how can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
On every platform, it's just madhu.life. That's Madhu. Madhu, as we say in America. Madhu. Madhu.life, life. And any single platform, anywhere, that's our website. And again, we just give everything away for free. All of our knowledge. We have a community where we have thousands of people, and everything I share here, we create courses and modules and templates for, and we just give them away because I'm so deeply grateful for my teachers who've shared this knowledge with me that I just want to do everything I can to just make this as accessible as possible. But what I would want to do, we're working on one particular thing around discipline, which hasn't come out yet. And so what I can do is, before it even gets publicly launched, anyone who comes from this podcast specifically, we can maybe come up with the trigger word, like maybe even just send me My Fit Tribe. Maybe that's anyone who sends me on any platform, madhu.life, just My Fit Tribe. What I'll do is I'll not only get you access to all the free stuff, but there's one specific to discipline that we're building out that I think would be relevant to the points we're talking about here. And I can give you guys access to that as well. Just remember to send me the word My Fit Tribe so I know you're coming from this one, and I'll give you early access before we make that public.
Awesome. I love that. And I'll put that in the show notes and on our promotional information as well. So I thank you for joining me. As I wrap up, we have a question that I ask all my guests. It's a 2-part question. So if you, Madhu, today can have a conversation with your past self, maybe the young one who was always told to not worry about it right before you take on this journey into your studies, what advice would you give your past self?
Before I answer, I just have to say thank you too. You provide so much wonderful knowledge on this podcast, and it's such a blessing. It's a labor of love, and I just, on behalf of everyone listening, thank you for creating a space like this. To answer that question, I would say practice fearlessly, ambitiously, committedly going after everything you want, because the only thing you can't ever get more of is time. And to fully utilize the time, take full advantage of every second, every hour, every minute you have to go after your biggest dreams, and especially do it in a way that improves your quality of life and the quality of life of everyone around you.
So now you today can have a conversation with your future self. You can pick how old he is, maybe sitting in your favorite meditative place, I don't know. But if you could ask your future self one thing, what would it be? And what do you think he would say back to you?
I would ask, what was the most deeply satisfying or nurturing thing that you did in your life? Like what was the most purposeful, deeply satisfying, nourishing part of your life? And my guess would be taking on the burden and the discomfort of trying to, or of making knowledge accessible in places it was otherwise very difficult to access. So, in maybe one sentence, going out of my way and taking on the inconvenience to improve others' happiness in life through making knowledge of the self accessible.
So sitting in the uncomfortable in order to provide knowledge for others, in order to encourage them to be their best version of themselves.
Well said.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you again for your time today. Again, we'll put all your contact information in the show notes, and I appreciate your time and all sharing everything that you've learned.
Very grateful for you as well.
Thanks for listening to the My Fit Tribe podcast. Tune in weekly for our latest episode for more health and wellness insights and inspiration. For more information, visit myfittribe.org. Don't forget to share, like, and download this episode, and thank you for your support. Please know that the opinions and comments presented here are those of the guests and do not necessarily constitute medical advice or the opinions of My Fit Tribe. Copyright 2026, all rights reserved. This podcast is recorded and produced by Jake Johnson at Paradigm Productions in Madison, Wisconsin, and is a production of My Fit Tribe, LLC.